Okay, it's after 5, so it's entertainment time. And you're on the Senior Living Podcast. And our entertainer is a local favorite here at Overture. So we're going to let him do a song. Then we're going to get into a little bit of a story. So sit back and enjoy yourself.
Take a look at yourself before you accuse me. Take a look at yourself and say I'm spending my money on other women. You're taking your money from someone else. Well, I talked to your mom 3 or 4 nights ago. I talked to your mama 3 or 4 nights ago. Well, your mama said, son, don't you call my daughter no more. Before you accuse me, take a look at yourself. Before you accuse me, take a look at yourself. You say I'm spending my money on other women. You're taking your money from someone else.
That was really good because Saturday night I was pretty far back and I was right behind the fountain. So I didn't catch that really close up fact. So, okay, it was a treat. And so we want to first let our audience know. Okay, Darryl, tell our viewers like who you are, what you do, and who you serve. And let's stay in the entertainment part of your business, your life.
Sure.
Right now.
My name's Darryl Mudbone Trombley. I've been playing music for about 40 years. And about 2.5 years ago, I moved down here from Detroit and thought I was retired. I from music. I had been playing with the same person for about 35 years, a couple of different bands, and we did an acoustic duo called The Journeyman for a number of years. And I just figured, I'm leaving my best friend Rick behind and not going to have that connection anymore. So I started selling off guitars, sold off all my equipment, thought, I'm not going to do this anymore if I'm not doing it with Rick.
Right.
And then I got here and just kept finding more and more music stuff going on. There's so much music in this part of the world. It's just incredible. Every place we went to, there were solo acts playing, lots of concert places. I ended up hooking up with a friend of mine who was playing at the Dixie Tavern, and they had a jam session. So I grabbed my guitar and went down there, and man, that just reset the hook of getting in front of people and wanting to play again. So that's kind of what got me back to it.
Dang, it reminded me how we talked before we come on. It's like getting the Blues Brothers back in business, but we're not talking blues here. We're talking a one-man show. So, well, let me just tell our viewers because they may not have been there, but it was about a month or so ago, and I heard the last minute that you were playing, and I had a call, and I come down there, and there's a seat open, and I was like front and center, and I was blown away by the quality of your tunes. Not knowing you, not even knowing Tracy was related to you. I see this lady come up, and I'm thinking, man, he already has a groupie, and I'm going like, that's pretty cool. He comes with a person that's following it. And then I found out you were married to her. So I kind of like, okay, she is a loyal fan. So tell our viewers, like, when you started 40 years ago, what was that like? Did you somebody introduce you to playing a guitar? What was the start like?
So the beginnings of it, I'm 10 years younger than my next oldest sibling, my brother Jeff. And, wanting to be the the little brother that hangs around doing the cool stuff big brother does. I was just all over his stuff all the time. And he had a band. This was mid-70s. And I'd hang around listening to all of the stuff they were doing. Neil Young, Beatles, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, that kind of thing. And he gave me one of his guitars when he bought a new one. Well, the one he gave me had a cracked neck, so I could never keep it in tune. I took a couple of lessons and never was able to make it sound like anything, so I gave it up. I was about 12 years old. And then I started working for a contractor, and I was his first employee. We spent all the time riding around in his truck listening to a boombox sitting on our lap. And he started telling me tales about him playing in a band in high school. And that kind of rekindled the fire. And I was 21 years old. I decided, you know what, I'm making some halfway decent money. I'm going to go out and buy myself a nice guitar. And took a few lessons, ended up spending some time with my oldest brother, who's almost 20 years older than I am. And at that point, I just was eating up music, everything that I could listen to. I was just digging it. And I went through his record collection and ran across an album called Layla and Other Love Songs. And I pulled that out, and the first song that I turned on was Key to the Highway. And for those who aren't aware of Layla and Other Love Songs, that's by a band called Derek and the Dominoes, which was Eric Clapton trying to find a way to get some anonymity because he was tired of being Eric Clapton, the rock star. So it was all of this really cool blues music that I had never been exposed to before. Again, everything that I was listening to was from my brother, that was the kind of mainstream folky classic rock kind of stuff that we think of now. And hearing Key to the Highway with Eric and Dwayne Allman playing, and I think it probably goes about 5 minutes into the song before somebody starts singing anything. And that just opened up a whole new world of me wanting to learn more about where this music came from. And Key to the Highway was made famous by Big Bill Brunsey. So I started to learn about his music, and a lot of stuff Clapton did was by like Robert Johnson and all of those guys. So I just used that as a springboard to dig in and learn more. Now my musical path has taken me down so many roads that I never would have dreamed. And it's just phenomenal.
What do you say? You mentioned your partner, Rick. What did y'all just bump into each other and then start playing, and then that started a relationship?
It was even more bizarre than that. I had a band together, and we played at a little bar in Mount Clemens, Michigan, where I cut my teeth with blues. That's where I grew up. And the bar was Chrissy's Lounge. And my regular bass player couldn't make a gig. A friend of mine who moved in from out of town from Wyoming happened to be in the area, and he said, you know, if you need a bass player, there's a guy that I work with. And it's like, how bizarre is that? This guy that just moved here like 2 months earlier is introducing me to musicians in the area. He got me his number. I called him up and said, hey, can you play this gig? It's just kind of blues stuff. He said, yeah, I'll be there. I'll figure it out. He walked in 30 minutes before we started playing, plugged in his amp, set up his guitar, and we took off and played. It was just perfect. You'd think we'd played together for years. We finished the gig. I said, thank you. He said, yeah, call me again if you ever need anything. It was a year later before we crossed paths again, and I needed another sub. And I called him, and he said, yeah, I kind of was hoping that you'd call. And at that point, we decided, you're going to be the bass player. So the other fella had so many other things going on. He was kind of relieved So Rick became the bass player, and the band in those days was the After Hours Blues Band.
Mm-hmm.
So Rick and I had played together with After Hours with a few other changes in the group for about 20 years. And then we started doing an acoustic duo that we called the Journeyman.
Mm-hmm.
So Rick started playing bass, I played guitar, and then he picked up playing guitar. So I switched to adding, tried mandolin. I really stink at that. And then I switched to a ukulele and then back to guitar. So we kind of would mix it up, and just everything we played, and this will probably sound conceited and selfish, but we started with everything we played was what we loved.
Mm-hmm.
And by virtue of us loving what we were doing, the audience got into that vibe. And then I was introduced by a good friend of mine that he's kind of gone the same path of solo acoustic musician, Gordy Hunt. And he introduced me to a guy, an artist named John Hyatt. And Hyatt's from Nashville. And he had a whole lot of just really amazing songs. So that kind of turned me into paying more attention to what the lyrics were instead of just what the groove was or the songs that were known and that kind of thing. So Rick and I just went down this trail of musical diversity. We never knew where it was going to lead. I'd put together a set list every night that was summarily ignored. And we just started playing and seeing what we felt next. If somebody yelled something out and we knew it, which was rare. We didn't know a ton of popular. Well, Rick knew everything. Rick had played in bands 20 years before he and I met.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew just about everything. I didn't. And being that I was the lead singer in all these bands, I knew the songs that I knew. I would have to study a song a bit to be able to pick it up and do it justice.
Right. Do you say, like, for the young people getting started, what do you recommend, like buying a guitar, taking lessons, finding a mentor? How would they get started in your eyes, given that you've had a 40-year journey? What would you say to a young person wanting to pursue music?
The amount of stuff that is available to somebody wanting to get into it now is absolutely incredible. There was no internet to speak of when I started playing. Mm-hmm. You didn't do something by looking it up on YouTube and watching somebody play it and having some kind of instruction. I literally would play the song on an album, lift the needle, put it back, and listen to it again, write down the lyrics so that I could get the lyrics in my head.
Oh my God.
In that was the only way to learn songs. I couldn't look up the lyrics. Occasionally you'd get an album that had the lyrics on the liner notes. But then I found that I had to write the lyrics down to be able to memorize them. So by writing it, that connection put it in my head. Now, you probably noticed the other night when I was playing that I got a big 3-ring binder because I can't remember squat anymore now that I'm getting older. So I got a few songs that are still up here, but for the most part, to add new things, I just have a hard time with retaining it. So I read a lot.
Sure. So is that kind of like the speakers have their teleprompter? Is that
that's
like,
my teleprompter?
Yeah. Okay. There is an influx of so much information.
Yeah.
And that is kind of cool because you can pick people that you like, and then their music is out there, so it's easier to adapt to it. What's been the toughest thing if you look back on that 40-year journey? You obviously did make a living doing it, but you always kind of had your job, plus you did this for the enjoyment that it must have filled your heart and your part.
Yeah.
So how hard is that? Because if you're working Monday through Friday, and then you have the weekends off and you're playing gigs, how do you recover? And what's that schedule kind of like?
it is, it's exactly what you said, that it has to engage the passion to be able to pay you back to make you want to go do it again, because it kicks your butt. The most extreme instance of a place that we got into playing, this was with the full band, was at a little place in Detroit called Lenny's Blues Deluxe Cafe. And for those in the audience that are familiar with this term, and I can say this now because Lenny's has been closed for decades, but Lenny's was a blind pig, which means it's an unlicensed after-hours establishment. So we would go set up, and they'd open the doors at midnight, and we would play from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. And they had the most phenomenal food. It was a restaurant. And when you got the special coffee, it had the little tin cup that was normally for creamer, and they would substitute that with other beverage type things.
Like adult beverages?
Yes, indeed. Okay. And so, again, all of this was kind of on the sly under the table. And it was the coolest place to play. All of the other bands, when they were done playing, because bars closed at 2:00 in Detroit. So all the other bands, when they were done, or the people that were going to other places got thrown out because the bars were closed, and they'd come to Lenny's. So we always had all of these different musicians that would come in to play, and we'd jam, and it was just a big jam session and party all the time. But I was working heating and air conditioning contracting. So I was up and at work at 7 a.m. on Friday, get home from work and try to go to sleep, and I couldn't. And then I'd have to be up and have the car packed to head down to the gig to be able to load in at midnight, start playing at 1, get done at 5, pack up, get home. Sun was coming up, and now I'd get my 18th win because the sun's coming up, and I'd have a hard time getting back to sleep. And we played 2-nighters there, so I did the same thing on Saturday night. So get back up at 11 o'clock, drive back, set up, play 5 o'clock Sunday morning. We're done, try and get home, and that was a race. Beat the sun so I could try and crash and get some sleep, and then get normal again before Monday morning rolled around and went back to work. That was the toughest stint. But again, the atmosphere was just so awesome that it was well worth every bit of it.
I have a friend, and he plays guitar, and I mean the drums, and so he was probably, I'm going to guess he was just shy of 60 when he did this. He got a gig which probably took him 10 months on the road. And they went from here to Texas and circled around. They had all their little places, and he was beat. I mean, you talk about, you're not 25 anymore, and you're traveling, like you just said. And he just, he had some time after a job, and he was in between jobs, but I remember him telling me it kicked his butt, because you talk about that routine that you just went through. You're finishing up at 3 a.m. and then you got to get on the road to the next town, and you might get there and you're like still fired up from the night before, and you got to get some sleep because you got to do it again that night. And it was like, as he was telling me this routine, I'm going, dang, that, it's almost like the experience of being a roadie, hitting all these small towns, but understanding that you're performing till the late morning, and you still have to get everything together for the next day. Did you ever, did you ever leave a job for a period of time and do this full time, or
No.
It was always a side gig?
Always a side gig, and everything that I did was always local. So we played it most every weekend for a while. But I never did that tour thing. I early on, I had some friends that from work. I changed jobs, and of course, you
Mm-hmm.
get to know people. And I said I was a musician. They all came out to the bar. And Monday, I went back to work, and somebody said, "What the heck are you doing here? Why are you working doing this instead of going and being a musician and
Right.
a rock star?" And I said, I made a decision a number of years ago that what meant the most to me in my life was my wife and my family.
Mm-hmm.
I love what I do musically.
Right.
But I first and foremost wanted that security of knowing I could get up, go to work every day, and provide with insurance and all of the stuff that comes with working a regular job. And then the other piece of it is I've been blessed to know a lot of really fabulous musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to watch their struggles. This is not an easy business.
Yeah. Your environment. Speak to the environment, because that is one thing everybody has shared with me. Like, there's, at 3 o'clock in the morning, there's different things going on. So you're inside of that environment. How did you balance that? Or go ahead, continue with what you were saying.
Most of the time, and I'm guilty of this, the easiest thing to do is get sucked into either alcohol or drugs, or both for some.
Right.
I've been blessed. I've never done anything harder than marijuana. I tried one time to go out with the band I was playing with. They all headed for the parking lot on break, and I thought, I'm in with the cool guys now. And I went out, and I came back in after break, and I had to look at where to put my fingers on the neck of my guitar because it just didn't affect me the right way.
Right.
I thought, I'm done with this. Drinking, I would have a few drinks and I'd keep myself paced because I had to be able to pack up and go home. So I've always been very blessed that I could balance that. I've had people in my band that I literally had to ask them to leave the band because they could not hold that together.
Right.
And it is really tragic to see somebody unwind that way.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends, we've all grown older. Some of us are still here. My good friend Rick that I mentioned, he actually passed away a couple of years ago, which absolutely devastated me.
Right.
COVID ended up taking him from us.
Oh, wow.
And so many people that wasted what their talent was because they let those demons get hold of them.
Yeah.
And it's so tragic to see that. And I've really been so blessed to be able to walk that path and not have it take me further afield than it has. I've had my days. I've had the nights that I had too many and somebody else got me home. And I'm no Puritan by any means. But there's a whole nother world out there when you start living that way.
Yeah.
And I've been fortunate.
Yeah. That having spent 12 years in the restaurant business on the distributor side, I knew a lot of bartenders. I knew a lot of people that touched the entertainment business. And, you would hear those stories that the people that couldn't, manage that lifestyle, which if it's all around you and you say you're a product of who you hang around the most, and if you're hanging around people that are doing drugs or drinking all the time, it can rub off on you.
Sure.
And I thought back after my health thing, I was like, all the dumb things I did in life, it was because I was drinking too much. And it was like, we lose all judgment when we overstep that line of being able to think clearly. And my friend too had his struggles with it because it's so hard to love entertainment, love that business, but with it comes the partying part of it. And it's like, it's really hard. And you hear it now, all the big names are going that have been through issues like that. So,
Yes.
it's easy to go down that path. You mentioned the other night it was Eric Clapton's birthday, I think. And then I heard Tracy say something. Your son's name is Eric. Is that true?
Actually, my son's name is Derek.
Derek.
Because everybody, when we found out she was pregnant, and we were talking about, baby names, of course, everybody assumed I was going to name him Eric after Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, I'll name him Derek after Derek and the Dominoes, and that way it'll be kind of sneaky and get around those that didn't know. But I always talk so much about Eric Clapton and Derek and the Dominoes, I didn't put anything over on anybody.
Okay. So what did Tracy, in all those years of support? It's not easy supporting a person that's in that entertainment world. Were there challenges there? Will you just go to places? Because when that first time I saw you, it was the cutest thing I think I've ever seen. Because it was truly that concept of the groupie kind of thing, not groupie, but supporter of it.
Yeah.
So obviously she's your biggest supporter.
Oh, yeah.
So what was her thoughts of you kind of balancing that out? And of course, you have responsibilities of other things.
She has been absolutely amazing. Every single thing that I have wanted to do, she encouraged me every step of the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang, that is good.
And there were times, especially when the kids were young, I was out working all week. There were times in those days, again, I was doing heating and air conditioning work, and it was all weather driven. So in severe heat or severe cold, I was working long hours, and then I'd come home on the weekend, and Friday night I'd be packing up my guitar and heading out the door, and then Saturday night doing it again. And she's carrying the load of taking care of the kids. And then I was just destroyed Saturday and Sunday during the day, trying to recover from expending all the energy the night before. And so, yeah, there were times that it really put a lot on her. But as soon as our kids were old enough and, they'd go stay the night with friends or my parents or my sister, Donna, then every opportunity she was coming along with me.
Okay.
And then mainly when we were doing the duo things, the Journeyman, that kind of turned into our party time. We were playing at this bar in Mount Clemens, again, different place, every 2 weeks, like clockwork. And so all of our friends would come up, and it was the nice thing about playing acoustic stuff. It's usually an earlier show. So we'd play 7 to 10 p.m. And, as people are getting older, everybody's about going out and going home earlier instead of the 10 o'clock to 2 thing. So when her friends started coming and hanging out, then that got to be a little bit more enthusiasm for her. Instead of just watching what I was doing, she got to enjoy herself with friends while they were hanging out and joking with us, and Rick and I teasing them and things like that. It was just a lot of fun. Imagine having 30 to 50 people gathered around a campfire where there's a bartender.
Wow.
That's about the way it felt.
Sure. What did any of your kids take that music gene and pursue anything with it, or did they go a different direction?
A little bit. So Derek actually has 2 of my guitars hanging on the wall in his apartment. My very first guitar that I bought, I actually gave to him. And he's played a couple of times with me. We played at a cancer fundraiser in Michigan a few years back called the St. Baldrick's Festival. So that was very cool to share the stage with him, but it never really set the hook like it did with me.
Right.
I also have my stepdaughter, Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
She's not my daughter, but she is gifted.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't want to do anything with it. She wanted to pick up my guitar one time, and she was playing fluidly within a couple of weeks. And then got tired of it. She set that aside. She picked up painting and drawing and did that fabulously, but it didn't fill her cup. And so it was like I was really hoping that she was going to do something and engage with it. And she just can dabble in everything, but she doesn't need it to fill her cup. She's all about her kids.
Wow, do any of them live locally, or are they back in Detroit?
Both kids are up in Michigan.
Michigan.
And we moved here because I had a business opportunity, like I said, about 2.5 years ago. Got a lot of friends in the area. We've been coming to Kennesaw in the area for about 10 years for work and vacations and things like that. But part of my family is my brothers are now in Florida, and the rest of my family, my 2 sisters are up in Michigan, and my kids are in Michigan. So we're spread out a bit, but we text each other every day and make fun of each other and all that.
That's so good. What do you say, like, when you moved down here and you obviously worked pretty close? I know where you said you worked. What was your living quarters like? Did you think about, am I going to get a house? Am I going to do a place like here? What was that process like when you guys were thinking about where you were going to live?
To be blunt, it was pure hell trying to figure out what we were going to do. I found this job that I have now October 1st of 21. And I started working down here in person December 1st of 21. And in that time, we sold our house in Fraser, Michigan, bought a townhouse in Marietta, sight unseen. We had a great realtor we were working with. And at that time, November of 21, the housing market was insane. Every single thing we found online, by the time she could get to it, it was sold.
Right.
So she walked in the door of the place we bought, and it was, I want to say it was like 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. The only thing we saw other than pictures was she walked through doing a video chat with us. And she walked out the door, and my wife and I both said, buy it, put the offer in. So we ended up doing that, and we ended up, we were in a 2-story colonial. It was about 1,600 square feet when we were in Michigan. And we always said, okay, if we ever sell this house, we're going to go to something that's a ranch, all on one floor. I've already had one hip replaced. My back and neck are in terrible shape. And we ended up with a 2,100 square foot 3-story townhouse.
Okay.
32 stairs to get from the front door to our bedroom. And we fell in love with the place once we, learned to live in Georgia in all of the idiosyncrasies of things like the bugs that are here compared to Michigan, totally different world. And then due to, aging and health issues, we got to the point that we couldn't do the stairs anymore. It was basically a risk. So we found our way here to Overture Barrett and decided, let's go check this place out. And we just wanted to have something in case something went bad. We knew where we needed to go to. We just were kind of shopping. And we came in the front door the first time on Veterans Day. I didn't serve. My oldest brother, Roland, did serve in the Air Force in the late 60s. My brother-in-laws, Jim and Andy, both served. And my dad was a World War II vet. He was at Pearl Harbor when it was hit on December 7th of 41. So I've always been hugely respectful of the military. Walking in the door here was like, wow, people get it. They really care. They celebrate our veterans. And Tracy and I went to breakfast after visiting here for a little while, and said, I think this is our place.
Mm-hmm.
Then we decided, what are we waiting for? Why are we going to wait until one of us is injured before we go?
Mm-hmm.
Let's think seriously about this and visit again.
Right.
And we came in time for the 4:00 crowd getting together in the lobby, hoisting some drinks, and it's like, we're with our people.
Yeah. 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 There's, the similar, when you have people living in the same place, you don't have to go down to the next house. And if you need anything, you just go downstairs.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's always going to be people there playing games, hanging out.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's so convenient to have that community because, if you're busy, then Tracy just wants to go downstairs and hang out. She can do it safely, without leaving the facility and going somewhere else. It's right here.
Exactly.
So that is a big convenience. So I know you have some things to do. So we moved it up a little bit so you could get to an engagement. So I want to thank you for doing that. So tell our viewers, our audio only viewers, how can they get a hold of you and what would be the best way to do it?
You can email me at tdarryl93, and I'll spell that. That is TDARRYL 93 at att.net. And also I've got a YouTube channel that is Da Mudbone, and that is DAMUDBONE. So
I love that Mudbone.
I'm Da Mudbone.
Yeah.
You can find some of the stuff that I've done over the years without bands, a little bit of stuff with Rick and I. So yeah, you can follow me in those ways. And again, I do this for the love of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make this, especially anymore, that this isn't a regular thing. I don't book myself into a constant club, but I stumble into opportunities. And when somebody says, hey, can you do this? And if I can do it, then I do it.
Awesome. So I want to tell our viewers, it's always good to refuse things, but to let our seniors, because entertainment is so important, because we, especially all the old songs you're doing, it just brings back the memories. And it was so cool in the courtyard and that Saturday night. The weather was beautiful, and just to sit out there and to have you just entertain us, it was a treat. So if you're interested in the senior, if people are out there and they want to get somebody that will play oldies, that have a good time, get a hold of Darryl, and he'll decide whether he wants to do it or not. Because I do believe what you said is, when you did the first one, it was on a Friday night, I think. And so it was the first time in a while. And it's like, man, you do anything you do when you do it for a few hours, it's going to wear you out.
Yeah.
It's just no doubt. So who could we put you in touch with? Do you like playing in front of seniors?
Yeah. I never had done this before. That was one of the things when Tracy and I were touring the place. We walked through the courtyard and onto that patio, and it's like, I could picture myself playing here. This would be awesome.
Right.
And the audience is phenomenal. That first time that I played, end of February, beginning of March, whatever that was, I finished the last song, and everybody stood up to applaud.
Yeah.
In my entire musical career, I've never moved people that way. I've had moments, but in this may sound, it may come off as crass, but to see these people get up and give me a standing ovation when a lot of people there had a hard time standing at all, that moves you.
Yes.
You got to be cast iron if that doesn't do something for your heart.
Right. Well, that's the cool thing when you get to be a senior. You really appreciate the talent that comes into your facility, because this isn't a bar. I don't have half the people smoking, so it's not like the environment is completely different. And it's like we're hungry for your type of entertainment. And it's like the appreciation obviously is transferred to you because we do appreciate it. We do appreciate that somebody puts themselves out there for a couple hours and just kind of puts it all on the stage. So thank you for doing that.
Certainly.
Could you tell what would be the one thing you would want our podcast guests to take home from our time on this podcast?
Listen to music, listen to those around you, listen to those you might not agree with. I've found with all of the stuff in the world today, when you can break things down to individuals and listening and talking to each other instead of talking about a group or a crowd, that it's very powerful. So listen.
I love that. It's an art that sometimes doesn't get used that much.
Yep.
So thank you, Darryl. Appreciate you spending some time at the end of the day with us. Thanks so much for being our guest.
My pleasure. Thank you.